Hi guys, welcome back to Rides for Days. Now, if you're having problems with your suspension on your 2018 and up Softail specifically, and I say that because I ride a 2019 Sport Glide, which is on the 2018 and up Softail frame. If you're having any dramas at all with your suspension, if it's too stiff or if it's not right, I think this is going to be the video for you. Alright, so it's been a while guys. The last time we spoke, I was having some real difficulties with the suspension on my 2019 Softail Sport Glide. So I'll give you, the purpose of this video is to give you a brief history of my suspension experience with this motorcycle and what I ended up doing about it. Now I don't want to go down the whole road of talking about liability with Harley-Davidson and warranties and all this sort of stuff. Basically, when I realized how bad the suspension was, even though I really should have known about it earlier because the ride was so hard, I was actually out of warranty. Now, I'm just going to say this now, and I'm going to get it out of the way at the start of the video before I get into what's happening, is that my belief is that when Harley-Davidson create a motorcycle, they create suspension for that motorcycle. And that, in my view, the suspension on a motorcycle or the components on the motorbike that make the suspension effective should be fit for purpose, and in my view should last what would be considered a fair and reasonable time on a vehicle. Obviously nothing lasts forever. So I had the bike 3 years when I made the change with the suspension, which I'll talk about in a minute. But within 3 years of ownership of a motorcycle, if your suspension is so fucked that you can't even ride down the road because it's so hard, in my view, Harley-Davidson have got an obligation, I think even legally, not just morally, but legally, to actually fix the problem. I didn't have the energy and I couldn't be bothered to chase Harley-Davidson to fix it. Ever since COVID has come along, it has actually had huge ramifications on my business and my staff. I'm one of these businesses that just, nobody in Australia wants to work anymore. And I've had a hell of a time trying to find people to help me in my business, and I've been so busy trying to keep the business afloat. I've got 3 kids, and it's very important that I obviously stay in business, and I just haven't had the time to chase Harley-Davidson down. I haven't even actually had time to make a video for the last 4 months because I've been so busy, and I've had to focus my priorities where I'm needed, which is in work. So to cut a long story short, I found somebody with a stock shock of a brand new Harley-Davidson Softail that they had bought, and they had gone to air ride suspension. I'm not going to even talk about where I got it done. Suffice to say that I paid $150 for the replacement shock, which had only a couple 100 kilometers on it. And I'm going to get into details, of course, in a little while. But what I've done to the bike, but I paid for the shock, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't chase Harley-Davidson for warranty. It's outside of warranty. I couldn't be bothered. I just decided, no, stuff it. I'm just gonna just pay as cheap as I possibly can to get out of it, and just get back to enjoying the motorcycle, because it's been tough riding. It's been like riding a hardtail. It's been crap. In actual fact. Alright, so anyway, brief history. I would say probably 12 months into owning this motorbike, I had noticed that the bike was getting harder and harder to ride, in the sense that it was feeling harder and harder to ride on the road. And actually people had actually made comments on my YouTube videos that my suspension setting must have been wrong, because they could hear it in my voice when I was riding, because you can, the other way, like when you're riding over hard roads, you sort of, your stomach goes and your voice sort of flutters. Like it was like that quite a few times, and I noticed it, and I thought that I had the suspension setting wrong, and I played with that a little bit, but it didn't fix it. And then I noticed over time that the actual external adjuster on the shock, I couldn't even move it. Like it was so stiff. I could not go from 1 to 2, or, you know, half to 1 to 2 to 3. I couldn't even go to 2. And, you know, really you should be able to cycle all the way to 5 and then back down to 1 again. And actually they say that you should do that once a month or once every 2 months to keep the mechanism working, to maintain the mechanism. But I couldn't do that. So I rode and rode and rode, and the bike itself was so hard that when you push down on the rear fender, you couldn't even move the bike. It was just so stiff. And in the end, and as you saw in the last video, I had to do something about it because it was just driving me nuts. So like I said a minute ago, I found somebody with a rear monoshock of a brand new, I didn't meet the guy, got it through a third party. I believe it was a breakout. It may not have been, but I think it might have been a breakout. And this particular guy wanted to get air ride suspension, and he'd literally just, I believe he rode the bike from the dealership and back to the dealership. Like, sorry, dealership home and then back to dealership, and then said, nah, take the shock off, do the air ride or whatever. So I scored that shock. So I had the shock replaced. Now, all along I had been saying that I really do think that the swing arm bearings need to be replaced, because there was a major problem with a lot of the Softail motorcycles from the factory where the swing arm bearings they're not seated properly in the swing arm. So basically the swing arm pivots off the frame of the motorbike. It pivots up and down, and inside that pivot point there are bearings in the swing arm, and that allows the frame to move up and down. When the swing arm bearings aren't seated properly, or they're munted, or they're corroded, the swing arm movement, it won't flex properly, and the shock won't work properly, and then the whole ride just becomes harder. So in my view, it wasn't just the shock, it was the swing arm bearings as well. But because I knew that the shock was totally seized, I hoped that by replacing the shock, that would be the problem solved. It wasn't. It was marginally better, but the problem wasn't solved. So I rode around. I did about 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers on that new shock, and the problem wasn't solved. And I went back and I said, look, we need to pull the bike apart, and we need to change the swing arm bearings, pull them out and have a look at them, but to me, they are not right. So we did that, and the swing arm bearings were munted. They were corroded. I don't want to say that they were incorrectly seated in the swing arm, because I actually don't know. But I do know that they were extremely corroded, and the way the swing arms are designed is that the inside there's a moving part. I don't really know how to describe it, but it allows for the free movement of the swing arm, and you couldn't move it at all. It was just completely seized. It was totally seized. So that was a huge problem. Straight away I knew, get these new swing arm bearings installed, and finally, I couldn't believe it, after all these Ks of hard riding, it actually literally solved the problem. So yes, it was the shock, but yes, in combination with the shock, it was also the swing arm bearing was completely rooted. So the purpose of this video is just to highlight the fact that there is an issue with these 2018 and up Softails. How much of it, there's a combination of a few issues. Some of the problems with my swing arm bearings may have been environmental. Like I live 300 meters from the ocean, So you're going to get a lot of corrosion from the ocean being so close. So I do accept that. But 12 months in, you know, well within the first 12 months of riding this bike, I found it to be a lot harder than, because when I bought the Sport Glide, I test rode one for a weekend, and I went to Port City Harley, and Mark, who was working there at the time, said, look, they had a Sport Glide on the floor, and he gave it to me for the weekend. He said, look, just take it home, see you Monday. I actually met up with him in Tari on the Monday afternoon, and we swapped bikes again. And he said, look, ride it for the weekend. And I rode it back from Port Macquarie, I rode it around everywhere, gave it back to him on Monday, and I thought, you know what, this has to be the most comfortable Sport Glide or Harley Davidson I've ever ridden. It just floated on the road, and the suspension was fantastic, the seat was comfortable. So I felt really cheated by going out and dumping $26,000 cash on a brand new Sport Glide, plus all the money that I spent on it. And to be having this really rigid ride, and I felt really cheated and annoyed. And on top of everything else in my private life with my work and everything that's going on, I must say I did start to get a bit depressed about it. Not just about the bike, but just everything in general was getting me down. And that in particular, you know, you have a bad week at work or whatever's going on, and things are going bad, and you go, I'll get on my bike and go for a ride, and you have this fucking bone-shattering, spine-shattering ride for an hour, and you think, fuck, you know, like, what's going on? But anyway, so the whole purpose of this video is just to highlight these issues that are going on with these 2018 and up sport Softails. If you are experiencing this, if your ride is hard, if it's not as plush as you believe it to be, there's a couple of things you can check, and it does involve a little bit of work. First of all, push down on your rear fender, and can you actually, is there any movement in the rear fender? Can you push it up and down, or is it really rigid? So there you're checking the free play in your swing arm. So what sort of movement have you got? And if it's really rigid and it's really seized, chances are that your swing arm bearings are either not seated properly or have corrosion. There's also a spacer in between, somewhere in that swing arm pivot, there's a spacer that binds up against the axle that can bind as well. So get your Harley tech to have a look at that as well. But the biggest culprit of the whole lot is the actual swing arm bearings, and they're a major problem and they're a major fault. Not in everyone, but in an awful lot. And it's been highlighted on YouTube by quite a few people. I'm not the only person for this to have happened to as well. But all is not lost. It's not a hugely expensive fix. You got the cost of getting some guy to take a wheel off, take a rear fender off, take a seat off, the bags off, get the wheel off, and then they've obviously got to then pull the swing arm off, and then bash out those, remove those swing arm bearings and reinstall them. But worth the hassle, you know, well worth it if you feel that you need to do that. You may be able to just do that and leave your shock on. So also then check your rear shock, check your monoshock by, can you actually dial it all the way to 5 and then dial it back? I can now dial this thing all the way up to 5 and all the way back to 1 again on the new shock, where the old one I couldn't do it. So I had a combination of a SIEZED shock and mounted swing arm bearings. I had the Quinella, whereas some people will just have the swing arm issue, and then once they replace the bearings, the shock might be fine. It's not always going to be the shock. So if your ride's really hard, don't think it's the suspension. It might not be the suspension, but there's a couple of things that you need to check. But anyway, that's it. Pretty short video. I just wanted to catch up with everybody and let you know what was going on with the bike. I know that a few of you had made some comments and were wondering, you know, what I had ended up doing with the bike. But yeah, it was a very hard ride for a while there, but now finally it's nice and plush, and loads more rides to come. I'm also doing quite a few postie rides these days, so I'll be doing a bit more Posty Bike Adventures, and I'll be filming them. So hopefully they'll come out with them. The whole channel won't be just sort of, I know you guys like to talk about Harley Davidson, but I'll be focusing on bikes in general, including some Posty Bike Adventures. I'll be doing some more mods to the Harley. They're not finished yet. Never finished modifying the Harley. But anyway, loads more video content to come. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and comment what's going on with your Harley. Have you had these issues? Chances are that you've landed on this video because you're having a problem with your suspension on your Harley. Let me know. Did you have a problem with your swing arm bearing? Did you have a problem with your shock? You know, what else is going on with your bike? Let me know. Love to hear from you. Always love a yarn. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.